Hello guys, welcome back to yet another video. Now today I have a very special guest on the channel. He makes awesome Dragon Ball content. Please say hello.
Hello, it's your friendly neighborhood SwagKage here. How are all of you doing today?
I love the intro, dude. But anyway, what are we talking about today, man?
So this is another excuse for me to do something that a lot of people know I like to do, and that is to talk about why I don't like Dragon Ball Super. In particular, Dragon Ball Super's fight scenes. You know, everybody knows the fight scenes of Dragon Ball are some of the best aspects of the series, and a lot of people agree that the fight scenes in Dragon Ball Super are pretty lackluster. Though, I do find that there's not a general consensus among the members of the community as to why the scenes are lackluster. Nobody can really figure out a specific cause for it. And that's what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, so my theory is a little bit different to everyone else's. Some people blame Toei's lack of money and lack of effort and caring, which is part of it, but I think the main thing is we're just desensitized by Dragon Ball's action, to be honest. I think that, Toei has used up all of their, techniques and, fighting techniques and effects and stuff in Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, and GT, where you go up to Super, they have nothing left. They have no cool sort of effects to use, so it's all really bland and stuff. And also, as we get older, we get more desensitized by these things. Like, when we were kids, it's like, oh yeah, Dragon Ball Z, best action ever. And if you get, if you grow older and watch it, again, you have sort of an adult mind and it's like, oh, this wasn't animated correctly, or this, art wasn't particularly great at the time. So yeah, I think that's kind of it.
Yeah, no, I definitely see your point there. And on top of that, there's only so many different kinds of fights that they can arrange. There's only so many different spins on those kinds of fights that can happen, and like you have 2-on-1s, 1-on-1s, 3-on-1s, 2-on-2s, stuff like that. So you can mess around with numbers all you want, and then you have your one-sided fights, your even fights, your fights that go back and forth, your incredibly one-sided fights, so on and so forth. And there are a whole lot of combinations there. You can play around with all of the different little pieces of the puzzle there and make a bunch of different scenarios. But there's a lot, and I mean a lot of fights in Dragon Ball. So I can see why they may have used up all of the different kinds of fights that they could possibly create, and in doing so used up every single animation technique, every single storytelling technique, every single technique for synthesizing drama through a fight, etc. Because there were a whole lot more wow moments in Dragon Ball, well, especially Dragon Ball, because of how new everything feels, and also in Dragon Ball Z. Even some in Dragon Ball GT, though GT's fights weren't particularly great. But here it feels missing. Especially in Goku versus Hit is a fight where it is very obvious that the series wants you to feel excited during the fight. It wants to create a sense of hype, and it's a pretty okay fight, but it's nothing spectacular. It's not crazy. It's not it's not yeah, this is one of my favorite fights. I would never put it on the same level as Goku versus Vegeta in the Saiyan Saga, and maybe it's because of what you said. And I mean, there are a bunch of different causes for it. What you said is very likely, and I know I've expanded upon that. But I also blame Toei, at least partially, because it feels more like Dragon Ball Super as a product than a piece of art.
No, I definitely agree with your point where Toei is to blame for this, to be honest, but I don't we don't know if it's Toriyama, if he's sending manuscripts and they're not particularly great, or maybe it's Toei's art and animation teams. We don't know. Maybe it's their budget. But I think another reason for this lackluster action is that the emotion is not there. We don't really care about the fights early on in Dragon Ball Super because one, we've already seen them, and two, they're not very emotional. But in the future Trunks arc, everyone digs the action, myself included. I watched episode 56 last night, and so good because the emotion was there and the action really sort of added to that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the action is, um, it's much improved in the Future Trunks arc. There were no real stakes in the Universe 6 arc. Like you just had Earth will end up in Universe 6, but like, what's the problem with that? I see no issue. Now Goku and Vegeta just train under Vados, and like that's the only consequence. Whereas here we're talking about the extinction of pretty much all mortals, and there's also Trunks' destroyed future. I guess it got destroyed again, actually. But like he's got a stake in it, and there's a lot more emotion there. I'm not a massive fan of the Future Trunks arc. I do understand why people like it so much. But I still don't think that it scratches the same itch that Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z did. And like again, I'm not entirely sure why. I think again Toei is to blame. It's partially an emotional thing because I'm just not as invested in everything as I was. Reading Dragon Ball, watching or reading Z. This arc is definitely better about that, but it's still not quite there.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, part of that could be, and without people even realizing it, is the 10-year gap. Like, we know these characters are going to live, we know everything's fine, so it's kind of like, oh, we don't really, care, but I think that reflects in the action, too. It's not as exciting, and they seem a lot quicker. Like, they like, not like, that they're, like, fast-paced, it's that they just go by quicker, which is like a bad thing and a good thing. It's a bad thing because we want these stretched out, long drawn out fights to really capture the essence of what Dragon Ball is, which is like long fights. Dragon Ball Z in particular, like long fights, people staring each other down, that sort of thing. But also, we don't want them too long as they start to drag, because Dragon Ball Z's fights, they did drag a lot, to be honest. But,
particularly in the anime, the original anime, with all that lovely filler.
of course. How can anyone forget? But yeah, I think the main driving force around good action in Dragon Ball is emotion surrounding that action, and one thing that we haven't talked about is the speed of the fights, because most fights in modern Dragon Ball now focus on the strength and like how powerful people are hitting, especially in the Battle of Gods arc where like Beerus and Goku, they were just like tapping fists like for the majority of the episodes, and it wasn't fast paced. Now in Battle of Gods, for instance, the movie, that was that fast paced I would not let you destroy my world scene. That was very awesome because it conveyed...
Yeah, that was incredible. I don't care what anybody has to say. There are a lot of naysayers who don't like Battle of Gods. That movie's fantastic. The fight at the end of that movie is fantastic. Very well done. Sorry to derail the conversation real quick here, but a lot of that had to do not just with stakes, emotion, animation, and all that, but another really, 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 really big factor is the other characters. They're not being used as well as they should. Dragon Ball did this incredibly, and Z does this in a slightly different way. So in Dragon Ball, what you had was, because not everybody had fully grasped what Goku was capable of, so you had a lot of scenes where Goku would be fighting somebody, and for a short period of time, it would cut to the side characters, and one of them would mention either what Goku was doing was incredibly impressive and shortly explain why, or what his opponent was doing was incredibly impressive and shortly explain why. When Goku fought Ten Shinhan in the 22nd Tenkaichi Budokai, when he was about to use the Kikoho, you're not really sure why you should be impressed or why you should be feeling any sense of tension, because, what is this technique? I've never heard of it before. What's it going to do? And then Roshi explains that the Kikoho is this incredibly powerful ability, and like Tenshinhan's about to blow the entire tournament stage to pieces with it. That happens a lot in Dragon Ball, and it does a very good job for building the characters up, for making the fight seem grander. And Dragon Ball Z does this in a different way, because a lot of the fights are one-on-one. Sometimes there are no characters around, so what you have is like in Goku versus Vegeta, you had Vegeta constantly thinking to himself about what Goku was doing, and Goku constantly doing the reverse. Or when Goku was fighting Majin Buu, you had Vegeta, thinking to himself, okay, now I get it, Kakarot's better than me, blah, blah, blah. And Super doesn't use the same technique. This is something that I just thought of, off the top of my head in the middle of this conversation. But I think it makes a lot of sense. Other characters that aren't participating in the fight have been, really important in fights in Dragon Ball. A bit more important than I think everybody thinks they are.
Yeah. No, I definitely understand that point. And yeah, like side characters, as well as like, fighting and comic relief, should build up the situation. And, which is not what Super is doing. Like, it kind of did it, like, in the Super Saiyan God transformation, where, like, everyone was like, oh, what was that? But never in the fights, never with new techniques and such. So, yeah, so that's, not particularly great. And also, the speed of the fights in Battle of Gods, with the I Will Not Let You Destroy My World, that was very, extremely fast. And that's missing in Super. Like, everything's focused on the strength, and it's sort of a yin and yang. You need the strength and you also need the speed to have a great Dragon Ball fight, and Super hasn't done that until this Future Trunks arc, especially in episode 56. There was a lot of speed and a lot of strength being conveyed visually, not just people saying, oh, he's strong. So yeah, that's also great. That's also what's important.
The first good example of this in this arc was when Future Trunks fought Vegeta, and it actually attempted to do something that Dragon Ball had done previously and add a bit more thought into the fights, a bit more strategy. Less just raw power and speed, and more thought. Like when Trunks powered up into Ultra Saiyan, third grade Super Saiyan, and used that as a distraction so that he could dodge Vegeta's attack more easily. I thought that was pretty clever, but that was the only instance in that fight in which strategy was used. And I was just like, what? You can't cock tease me like that. That was, I want more of that, but it's not there.
No. Yeah, you're completely right. Strategy does need to be used more often in Dragon Ball Super, and like modern Dragon Ball as a whole. We've been picking on Super a lot, but it's actually an issue with like modern Dragon Ball in general, except for like Battle of Gods. That was like perfect action.
I agree, yeah. I mean, like there was no strategy to really be used there. That was just a clash of wills, I think. He was fighting a god.
Just to conclude this, like how to make a good action scene in Dragon Ball is to have emotion, speed, like especially speed. That's like the number one thing. Interesting editing and animation techniques. Convey like they need to convey strength as well, and I think that's really it. Oh, and Toei needs to stop being lazy fucks.
Yeah, they also need one final thing, real quick before we go, and that is the wow moment of the fight. And every single major fight in Dragon Ball has had one of these, where, like, and Goku versus Hit got this right, where Goku pulled out that Kaioken with Super Saiyan Blue, but you had King Kai tells Goku, do not do more than double your power with the Kaioken. Goku uses Kaioken times 3, and then a quadruple Kaioken Kamehameha. You have the Kaioken times 20 Kamehameha against Frieza. You have Zarbon transforming against Vegeta. You have Goku transforming into a Super Saiyan. You have the instant transmission Kamehameha against Cell, where everybody thought Goku had gone crazy and was going to blow up the world. Then you have Goku getting ready to power up against Buu. Go all out Super Saiyan 3. And then his power up just fades, and then like the amount of tension in the fight suddenly goes through the roof, and you have the entirety of Vegito versus Super Buu is just one big wow moment. And Super doesn't really have any of those. You know, the pace of the fight kind of remains the same. Nobody does anything that would turn the tide of the battle, and it's like, what? That's a big part of, like, not just Dragon Ball, not just anime, but like all of fiction.
Yeah. No, yeah, like, you make a great point, actually. That is probably the best point in this, like, entire discussion. Like, they need that wow moment, bro, because, like, if they don't, it just, like, it kind of falls flat. Like, there was no wow moment in the Planet Potato arc. That's a very forgettable arc in that case, you know? So, yeah. I think we'll leave it to the commenters and people that watch this video. What do you think about Dragon Ball Super and modern Dragon Ball in general's action? Do you think it needs to be improved? What are your, like, what makes a good fight and action scene in your opinion in Dragon Ball? Please leave it in the comment section down below. I want to hear your thoughts. Please go sub to SwagKage. He makes great content. He's been getting a lot of exposure recently, so let's just keep that going. So, but yeah, guys, see you later.